Photosynthesis is when plants take in water and carbon dioxide. Photosynthesis occurs in two forms, light and dark reaction.
They both occur in the chloroplast of cells. Light reaction requires light from the sun and water for plants. The ultimate source of energy is the sun.
Sunlight, which is absorbed by the chlorophyll and splits water molecules. The product is oxygen, energy electrons, and hydrogen. High energy electrons will make ATP.
High energy electrons will make ATP. ATP is like a battery. It is the basic energy source for all cells. Two high energy electrons along with a hydrogen ion makes NADPH. The dark reaction, also known as the Calvin cycle, occurs in the chloroplast. The dark reaction completely relies on the light reaction. The dark reaction uses CO2, NADPH, and ATP. These are the products from the light reaction. The CO2 is transferred into glucose sugar with the help of ATP, hydrogen, and high energy electrons. The product of the dark reaction is glucose sugar. Now on to cellular respiration. In cellular respiration, organisms use oxygen to break down glucose food to release energy stored in food. The byproducts are CO2 and water. The first step of cellular respiration is glycolysis. This takes place in the cytoplasm of the cell.
What is the little...
It requires glucose. Glucose is broken down into pyruvate. Glucose is broken down into pyruvate. About 10% of the energy stored in glucose is released. 2 ATP created. The product is pyruvate, pyruvic acid, which is 2 ATP. It also makes NADH, which is high energy electrons. Note, this step does not require oxygen. Second step of cellular respiration is the Krebs cycle, also known as the citric acid cycle. This takes place in the matrix of the mitochondria. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell because they burn or break the chemical bonds of glucose, aka sugar, to release energy to do work in a cell. They have their own DNA and a double membrane like the nucleus and chloroplast. This step requires pyruvate from the first step of cellular respiration. The pyruvate from glycolysis moves into the mitochondria, where it is broken down into CO2. The CO2 is released by the cell along with energy to create ATP. The product is CO2 and 2 ATP. NADH is being produced and will be used in the next step of cellular respiration. The final step of cellular respiration is the electron transport chain. This takes place in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. And this step requires oxygen. High energy electrons from the first two steps are carried over by NADH and released to oxygen to create lots of ATP. The products are H2O, which is water, NADH, and 34 ATP. Most ATP is created in this step of cellular respiration. In conclusion, photosynthesis is cellular respiration in reverse.